Hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm trying to figure out how to stop this share here because I can't see anybody.
Yeah, I can only see you.
Let's stop this for a minute. There.
There everybody is.
Good evening. Hi.
Hello.
Can
Good
you
evening.
turn the sound up?
My sound's pretty loud. Can everybody hear everybody?
Mine's
hear
low.
We are not going to have Danielle today. She said she has to travel. So we have a quorum now, and I haven't heard from Dave.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Chris. So we got a quorum. Let's get going. Thank you, everyone. My name is Megan Ryan. I'm calling to order the Tuesday, December 21st, 2021 meeting of the Manila Community Services District Board of Directors monthly meeting. It is 6:31. We will start, let's see, we're continuing to hold the meeting via Zoom. Unless otherwise noted, all items on the agenda are subject to action by the Board of Directors. Time-specific items are noted, and I do not think we have any this evening. And it's the meeting is being recorded and will be accessible to the public. So we will start with a roll call vote to determine the quorum.
Dave Janetta, present.
Sequoia Falk present.
John Broderick, present.
Thank you. And Megan Ryan, present. Are there any agenda modifications this evening? Seeing none, we will move forward with the agenda as advertised for this evening. Our first item is resolution number 2021.07. This is in accordance with AB 361, proclaiming a local emergency persists and ratifying a proclamation of the state of emergency and authorizing remote teleconference meetings for the Manila Community Services Districts for a period of December 21st, 2021 through January 20th, 2022. In response to local COVID conditions. This would cover tonight's meeting and then also our meeting next month, which I believe is on the 18th. So we are looking for a motion on the resolution.
I'll make a motion in support of the resolution to meet via Zoom due to the COVID crisis.
Thank you.
Second that motion.
Thank you, Dave. We'll take a roll, or we'll just take a vote. All those in favor say yes.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed say no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda is public input, petitions, and announcements. This is the time in the meeting where the public members can speak on items that are not on tonight's agenda. The public is invited to present petitions, make announcements, or provide other information to the board on matters not on the agenda. And you'll have 3 minutes to comment. By law, the board cannot take action on these items that are presented during this time. Is there anyone that would like to speak on items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, I will.
Megan, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Because my phone is blacking out and doing weird stuff. So I just wanted to say that after the earthquake,
Sure.
a couple community residents had talked to me, and they are very concerned that the district have in place enough heavy equipment, which it seems we've gotten rid of most of our equipment, and enough parts. So if there's any major break or anything like that in the system, that it can be repaired here, especially if we're cut off. Because Sunberg or whatever it is, they're not coming out here. they're not coming to Manila to help us. And, you know, I don't know if we have a backhoe anymore or any of the other heavy duty equipment that we used to have. So that's important to residents.
Thank you.
And I feel that that's the board's responsibility to make sure we have that place. Repairs, in the past, the district could make repairs on pumps and stuff like that. And there was somebody experienced in welding and all the other things, but I don't know if there is anymore. And with the reduced staff, we're probably only going to have one staff person here if we're cut off. We used to have Maggie was here, and so that's something we need to, the board should look at, staffing and emergency preparedness and backup equipment and, you know, supplies. That's all.
Great, thank you. Appreciate your comments. And seeing that we have no other public members in attendance, so I'll close this portion of the public comment period, not on and not for agendas, not or items not on the agenda. Excuse me. Dave, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so this is a not, I mean, I know I'm not public, but well, I guess I'm kind of still part of the public, but just something that a couple people, I don't know if this is the right time. This would be something to try and get onto a future agenda item, but had a few people on looping that I guess we've talked a little bit in here about, like, you know, the condition of the road in particular on Lupin Ave, and, you know, owner who owns it, how, you know, maintenance of it, et cetera, et cetera. And I just was wondering if, you know, I could get some official sort of like, you know, notes and clarification for people that have been asking me, because it's the street I live on, you know, and it's you know, not, it's pretty bad, but anyway, they asked me if I would try and get something, you know, on the agenda just to figure out exactly what is what the official deal is with this road and what might be able to happen to get it drivable.
Sure. And I think, yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. And to clarify, just when you say what the deal is with the road, just to, you know, are we talking ownership and maintenance responsibilities?
Sorry, yes,
Okay.
specifically ownership.
So Chris has that information if we want to ask him to bring it back.
I
The
can make a,
district owns that road.
do you want me to make a comment on that real quick? Yeah, that road's horrible and every year it gets worse. We spent some time and money on it a few years ago, and just the last couple of days, we've had a guy out there grading it and putting some rock in it. And I'm gonna have a load put in, but I was gonna wait till after Christmas so this guy has a little more time to kind of spread it out. So it's historically been a problem. And we'll spend a little bit more time and money on that in the next coming weeks, Dave. So if people do come to you with that as an issue, you can direct them straight to us. I've had somebody else call me too asking about it, but we do own Lupin and we're responsible to maintain that. And aside from a grant coming in to actually pave it, which would be nice, we just keep putting lipstick on that thing with gravel. So I expect to have it be in a lot better shape in the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Would staff support, even, it could even be within the report to the board, bringing back an update on the Lupin Road and maintenance, and then also, you know, I think when an earthquake happens, it's always a good time to think about preparedness and how prepared are we. So I would like to see some information come back on that topic as well. And whether that's for January or February, but I think that would work for me. And I think it could be even a report on where we stand, but it would be good to have that information for the community. Thank you. Are there any other items for items not on the agenda? Seeing none.
I have another comment.
Okay, one
Um,
more, and then we're gonna move on.
Well, this is when you get to the speed hump thing.
Okay, I'm gonna
It's
get
not
that.
specifically about that speed hump. I have
Okay.
comments about that, but I have had two other people talk to me about speeding on Peninsula across the highway. One right up, right north of the park, and then another one just today about further north where he says they're going like 55 miles an hour there. And so I'll bring that up again, because if you're gonna start putting speed humps in and paying for them, there's gonna be more residents wanting it.
Okay, great, thank you very much. We are going to move on to business items. The first item is the district support letter for additional speed hump on Peninsula Drive. And we'll go to Chris for a summary of this item.
Thank you. I'll be brief with this. It did come up last month and the month before, actually, when some residents had asked to have this as an agenda item, and the board did support us moving forward with supporting it. So what I thought I'd get in our back pocket is a letter to the County Board of Supervisors that's based on a previous letter that at least gets it in our back pocket for future Board of Supervisors approval for this. To circle around a little with what Dendra had said, the reason why it's kind of limiting itself to Peninsula over by the school is because the school is kind of the impetus for causing more traffic over there. And we can't fund it directly, but I think there's a way we can have the school help pitch in to get that done. And I talked to Brian of the school yesterday about this. So there's some hope there that we can find some appropriate funding for that. So if we could get momentum in adding a few speed humps and having them put elsewhere in the community, I support that as well from a staff perspective. But I think the board is limited to looking at this because the public brought it to our attention. So this letter really will just put this in my file so that I can have something ready to go as we move forward, trying to get funding to actually pay for it. And it's around $7,000 to $10,000, I believe, to have a proper speed hump with the signage and striping put in over at Orange. So if anybody has any questions, I'm here for that.
That
Thank you, Chris. It is.
I have a question.
Well, Dendra, when we get to public comment,
Okay.
we'll take your comments. Thank you. Are there any members of the board that have any questions for Chris? Koya, put your hand, please.
Yeah, I like the point that Dendra brought up about, the more of these we see, the more people are going to want them. But I also think that's a good thing. However, the point Chris just made about the school being able to help out makes sense. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we could write a letter to whatever the appropriate law enforcement agency would be to encourage some additional monitoring because I don't think I've ever seen a highway patroller or someone who is monitoring the streets of Manila, maybe on the actual highway, but there's nobody that ever does that. And it might be nice. It might kind of dissuade some people if we had a presence and a few people got busted. I'm assuming this is probably a couple people that caused, and I've seen it in front of my house where someone was literally going like 50 miles an hour on Peninsula Drive, which was quite shocking. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to put that idea out there because it is sort of tied into this whole speed hump concept.
Yeah, Bree, I can just respond quickly if you don't mind, Megan. The 255 also had a lot of problems being monitored, and a lot of people complained, and they put those rate feedback signs up that you can see, and those seemed to help quite a bit. There's also these stripings that made speed feedback, kind of a visual feedback that how fast you're going. So those kind of help. But I'm totally with you there. I've never seen a cop out here ever as far as any traffic type of violations. I believe there's some mutual aid or crossover overlap enforcement by CHP, and they come out and help with abandoned vehicles and things like that. But as you can see, even yesterday, there's a truck on the side of 255. That's a very terrible hazard, and I don't think it's been removed yet. So that's all.
Thank you, Chris. Not that I'm glued to my window 24 hours a day, but I have, seen over the years at different times, a couple times a week, they've had a sheriff's patrol come through the neighborhood over here. So not a frequent all day presence, but I think the size of our county and the lack of, people to perform the service is also plays into the issue. I would think if outside of, should we want to, and maybe this is more for the discussion, but should we want to work on a different type of letter, then that should be agendized for a future meeting date. Were there any, Dave or John, did you have any questions for Chris on this, or for Chris on this item? Seeing none, I will open it for public comment. Dendra, go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Dendra, did you want to speak on this item? I think you do, but I see that you're on mute.
I've asked her to unmute. We'll see if she can get that. What is
Okay.
it, *6 or *9?
Yes, I think that it is a *6 to unmute. All right, well, and just to keep things moving forward, I'm gonna close the public comment and then bring it back to the board for discussion or motion on the letter. And the recommended motion from staff is to receive and file the attached letter for submission at a future date.
I'll make
Okay,
a
my
motion to
phone has
receive.
not been working, so I'd like to have my
Okay.
input.
You can, and we'll take that now. Thank you.
Okay, it's keeps blacking out. I don't know what's going on. So has anybody talked with, Chris, have you talked with a Peninsula Community Collaborative to see what it costs for the speed humps in front of the school?
Yeah,
The
that
total cost with all the drawings and everything they had to pay for and do.
yeah, it's somewhat complicated because theirs was a $30,000 project that included a sidewalk and other things. The county says they're around 5,000. So I think between 7,000 to 10,000 is a pretty fair assessment of what it would cost today.
All right, because you also have to put, before you can even do the speed hump, according to what I read, you have to put a light in. A street light. It has to have street lighting. And I guess the street lighting was what was at the community center. And I don't see how it's going to slow people down that much doing the speed humps at Orange, because they're already going to be flying. People are concerned about their kids walking to school. It's not just that little stretch. They're talking about further down Peninsula too. And I've heard complaints in the past from residents on the very southern end about how fast these people are coming, especially at whatever time school starts to get their kids there, picking them up. So the cost of putting in a street light, because there's none there, and the other costs. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. A minute, got about 1:20 left
Okay.
on your 3 minutes, unless that concludes your comments.
No, that's it on this. I just don't know if the placement is the best. If it should be further south.
Thank you very much. Yeah, with that,
I would be curious just to hear if Chris had anything to say about that. Are you?
well, I will, sorry, I'm just gonna close the public comment period. So I'd like to officially do
Can't hear you.
that at this time, and then and bring it back to the board for questions for Chris, deliberation, and then making a motion essentially. So I'll go ahead.
Yeah, just curious, Chris, I believe you've alluded in the past that there's some standard where it's every 600 feet or they do them. I was curious if you could speak to that in relation to the location that was picked, and also if there's anything you've heard about this street light requirement.
Yeah, it's about 600 feet, which places it 600 feet between speed humps is the standard, and that places it at Orange Avenue. They theoretically, as you could probably guess, you can put them anywhere you want. My only experience with the street lighting, I didn't see that pop out. It might be a requirement, but going up on Old Arcata Road, they're kind of in the dark. I've rammed into them pretty fast myself. A kind of an overarching comment is the district doesn't have powers in the roads in that regard in any sense. And my expertise there is extremely minimal. I would like to go ahead and put a huge speed hump right on Lupin because people go 55 down that potholed road and see how much expertise I can get in on it. But I'm not really sure if there's a requirement for a street light there. There is one at RCM at the community center site. I don't know if that was a factor or not. I'd have to look further into it.
Or go ahead, Dave.
I guess to follow up quickly, I mean, you said earlier we're not actually paying for it with district money. We can't pay for it. Is that what you said? So, I mean, ultimately, we're just supporting it. I don't think additional speed humps anywhere, I mean, are a bad idea. I don't see them doing harm. I mean, yeah, I guess if somebody wants to pay for a traffic study and do the required for like where exactly it should go, but putting one on Orange isn't going to hurt anything. It's certainly going to improve things, but if we're not paying for it anyway, and we're just supporting it and sort of getting the ball, helping to get the ball rolling, then yeah, I mean, it seems totally kind of benign, but just positive.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, it's stated in the things that Chris gave us at a previous meeting, that whole list of requirements of what you had to do beforehand. And it did say that 600 feet, but it said about there needs to be a light. So I guess people can see it at night and doesn't cause accidents. So it was in that group of papers because I read that very carefully.
Thank you. And we close public comment on this item. This letter is in support of residents that brought it forward to us and asked us to put together the letter in support. I think, as Chris has pointed out, we don't have the jurisdiction to do the improvements nor the funding. And so the jurisdiction would fall to the county. I think that whatever parameters need to happen, whether it's the spacing, the light, etc., can be worked out with the county according to the county regulations.
The only other thing I would be curious about, whether it was necessary to put in the letter or whether it's just a separate thing, but I'm still curious what about these like more temporary type of speed bumps that are actually something you just lay across a road that are made of some sort of rubber type material or whatever. Like, I don't know what the rules are with that, if that's something we could inquire about or what, but because that could be a potential solution in some of these other areas. You have the speed tables and then you have some of them supplemented with these smaller speed humps that would be economical, I would imagine, but I don't know how we would navigate inquiring about that.
I can ask County Public Works about that. I think you brought that up before, Sequoia, and I think I apologize for not following up on that. So I wrote it down to take a note and make sure I can follow up on it.
That sounds good. And then I think we agendize that as a separate discussion item moving forward. Thank you.
Can I make a motion to approve the letter and let staff do what they need to on it?
I'll second the motion to approve the letter.
Great, thank you. And we'll take those in vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, no. Say no. Motion carries 4-1. Thank you, everybody. Good discussion and looking forward to some additional speed hump traffic safety measures coming in our future. All right, so we got through the letter. All right, our next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2022 first quarter budget versus actual report. And I will go to Chris for a summary.
Thank you. This is also a carryover from last month and ties into the rest of the agenda in a way, because everything else is basically financial stuff. I will talk about earthquakes and some general manager grantee stuff later. But generally speaking, if you look at these figures, this is the first quarter of this year that we're currently in, which is fiscal year 22. We're looking pretty good. That's because of a lot of different things that are happening, and we always look good in the beginning of the year, and we start to flatten out as we go on. But this is relatively expected and pretty solid. None of these really require any action. This is my quarterly report to the board just for the budget. I think at January's meeting, I'd like to present, where we are with our reserves and our general account balances and things like that. But I won't go too far into this, but we're having a lot of trouble like everybody else is with our county auditor and getting reports. So those are also some findings in our audit, which we can talk about in a few minutes. But this is basically the position we are at this point in the year. If there's any questions or clarifications that I could offer, there's nothing that really jumps out at me that I can explain in advance other than the park income. That's a tax allocation. So it looks like the park's doing really great at the beginning of the year. And as we start spending that $17,000 that we allocate, it starts to chew into that. It also shows, well, I'll talk about the last year's park performance separately because it didn't do so well as we expected. But otherwise, that's where we're at. And it's the general take is that the district is performing financially pretty well.
Thank you, Chris. Any board members have any questions for Chris on this first quarter report? I'll jump in. I think for the most part, it seemed good to me. My only question, I think you hit on it, was the park income looking close to budget, and then with park payroll being quite a bit over what was budgeted for that item.
Yeah, if you want me to expand on that, the payroll for the park, I had reduced at the budget creation meeting, and I reduced it way down to $1,500 a fraction of what we used to budget having a full-time staffer in the park. So we still had staff doing the garbage in the toilets until we got in line to have Restif or a contractor take care of that, which we do now have going, which is a couple $100 a month. It's very affordable, but we did go over, it looks bad, 278%, but at $2,600 isn't really that big of a deal. We can do a budget adjustment later on in the year as needed. But you'll see also that the professional services where I had budgeted 10,000, which is basically the rest of that payroll allocation into private contracting that the board had approved in order to take care of some of those services at the park, is way below. So those kind of balance themselves out, and the park isn't looking bad as a whole. It's just those two classes aren't really jiving today. So the performance is still within expected boundaries, I should say. And I'm happy to report that our contracting with Restif is working out pretty well. And the guy lives in Manila who does it. And we do get some calls from people when it's time to service them again. I won't go into toilet paper talk right now, but yeah, that's working out pretty good. And if anybody has any questions about that, I can expand.
Great, thank you. No, that clarifies for me. It just jumped out as the largest percentage when I was taking a look over those. Do any other board members have any questions on this item for Chris? Seeing none, I'll move to the public. If there's any members of the public who are in attendance who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. And Dendra, now's your time if you'd like to speak on the first report out from first quarter budget.
I was going to ask about the park, but that's been asked about. Also, administration in the community centers over budget. I mean, considering percentages. And then I have a question about this travel and training that's in each department at $159.96. And center, it's not in the right spot. So I don't think it was added in as an expense. And my question, this comes up on the next item too, I think, the year-end budget versus, because it's done the same way with $490 some for travel and training. And, you know, I don't understand that. How it can be exactly the same? And it should be based on, you know, allocations. Like it used to be 50% sewer, 30% water or something like that. And park was like 6% and this was in the old days. So I don't know exactly what the percentages are, but that's
Okay. Do you mind?
not
can I jump in?
right. And especially when it's exactly the same amount.
Yeah, that's understandable. That's because we just use a percentage for, say me, if I have 4% in the park and 4% in the community center, which is not correct. That's the figure would be balanced like that. Sometimes Alicia will go, how do you want me to split that trip or that class? Just say split it 4 ways. And that's what you end up with. These are all 25%. But so it's not uncommon to find these numbers to be exact. Quite frankly, I would just throw those numbers into administration and leave them there.
I think
and
it's uncommon.
they would disappear. It's common. But let me bounce over to your M82,000 administration over budget. That's a good observation. That's because we have to pay our property and liability tax at the beginning of the year. So it goes way over 25% and then starts to flatten out. So that's an annualized expense.
Thank you. Did you have any additional comments, Dendra?
No, I think that's it.
All right, thank you. Gonna close.
Except I do believe that it should be prorated. I mean, I have another issue with the community center and some of the bills and expenses there that have happened in the past. And, you know, it has to do with the rent and the rental agreement. And there was a discussion about, you know, they're supposed to pay $500, anything under $500. And they're still seeing things that are being paid. And then at one point, the hoods in the kitchen, and Alicia chimed in that, you know, there'd been a meeting there. Well, the hoods in the kitchen, if you want to do that, then prorate it on the community use, which is about 1% of that. So RCM is the only one that uses the kitchen. They're the only one that uses the main hall. The main hall could not be rented in September because RCM had stuff stored in there because a resident wanted to rent it for a wedding reception and they couldn't. So, you know, they should be paying for all of it. They don't even pay rent for the main hall. That's my complaint. So.
All right, thank you very much for your comments. I'm going to close the public comment period on this item. Were there any additional questions for staff, for Chris, from the board on this? If not, we could look to make a motion. And that's on page 9 of the agenda.
I motion to receive and file the first quarter budget, first actual.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. And then all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Motion carries 4-1. Thank you all very much. Moving on to business item number 3, which is the fiscal year 2021 draft year-end budget versus actual. And I'll go to Chris for a summary on that item.
Yeah, more good times, more spreadsheets, more budget stuff. I'm glad we're getting all of this rolling. Okay, so this basically came about. I did get a complaint from a lovely member of the public that we didn't provide to the board last year's ending figures. These are basically the year end of June 30th, 2021. This last summer is kind of where we ended up. There's some adjustments still pending, but essentially you'll see that enterprise was down about 6,000. Non-enterprise is up almost, $4,500 or so. A big part of this is the COVID relief arrearages program has been approved, and we're going to get $25,000, $30,000 in water alone. So we would have actually been in the black for water. So that's going to be a bit different. These numbers will be provided, basically these numbers, straight to the auditor when he starts doing his field work for this next audit. But this is basically the position where we're at for last year. Some of the same things that I had brought up earlier about annualized expenses and calculating how we allocate, just throw this 4 ways, like travel and training things here and there. That's the same issue as this year. If you can see my screen, I highlighted this red number of 8,000 that were over budget in our water costs. I've been advised by Humboldt Bay that, because I kept asking them, why are we so far over? We can't control what they charge us monthly, but our bills have been way more than we budgeted, what we had expected, and they're being overcharged by PG&E due to some kind of tiered rate that they plan to correct. And they keep promising me, telling us and the other munis that they will be issuing credits when they get that resolved. So I expect to see that get fixed somehow. It'll probably show up in this year as we'll be under budget this year and over budget last year, but we'll try to make sure we get that corrected. The other adjustment I made was the board approved here at the water O&M for the water. It's 41,000 here. I don't know if you could see my little hand waving around here, but actually let me, if you don't mind, I'll draw a little picture. This 41,000 is 30,000 over because I added it due to that valve that was approved. So these numbers didn't look too crazy. The board did approve that. So we did spend it. We spent it right in here. So that's why we're actually a little bit over budget regardless of that, but that was about a $33,000 project. We're still very happy you approved doing that. Let me stop that. Hold on a second. There we go. What else here? I did some adjustments on the, let me go back up. The income for the community center. Where are you? I think I might be missing a page here. I had to make an adjustment because we, at the end of the year, put a lease payment from the school into the wrong year. So it was a little bit low. So that got fixed. I'm sorry, it is right here at the community center. I added $57.95 for 1 month. So we are barely 2.5% under budget. So this is all pretty tight, pretty clear. The park is a little bit lower than expected. This is because we need to record a couple of leases for the aqua farm. I'm sorry, the aquaculture that we leased to some oyster production. And we did budget some RV from last year that never transpired. We don't have to go too far into that yet. Let me see. That pretty much wraps it all up. You will see the park shows a $13,000 loss here. And I had a great way of explaining that away. And I don't have that currently at my fingertips, but we are definitely over budget in park payroll for last year. That did include our full-time position there and some backfilling at part of the year when Maggie got injured, and Ken, who's a way more expensive, went in and backfilled him a little bit. So that will probably be some kind of a budget adjustment later in the year. I'm sorry, that's for last year. It's already closed. It'll be a journal entry and something we'll talk with our auditor about. So if anybody has any questions, I'll address them now.
Thank you. Do any members of the board have any questions for Chris? Question I have regarding the additional pending money for COVID. When do you have a date that you anticipated us receiving that, or?
Yeah, well, the application was due a couple of weeks ago. We just finalized that. I don't know when we actually get it, but we just this week received a new application for the wastewater side of that. So we're expecting to get probably upwards of $55,000, $65,000 in arrearages. Those funds will be applied to people's accounts that are in the rear. And that sounds great. It's as complicated as you can imagine when people decided to pay their bill and we still have $1,000, say, balance on their account. We were forced to use specific framing around an exact schedule, certain time frame that they would pay for, and then they cut it off. So those people who didn't pay during that time only will have their accounts credited. So okay. I don't know how that's going to be reflected in future financial statements or anything like that, but we're just happy to have that revenue backfilled by the state. So I don't have a date to answer your question when exactly we'll see that, but we'll make sure to have it applied in the correct year.
Okay, great, thank you. Appreciate the additional information on that. I will go, seeing there were no other questions, I'll move to public comment on this item. So this is the year-end budget review for 2021 versus actual, and Dendra, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, the same thing with the travel and training here. And what was this training for? Where was this training, and specifically what was it for? Because any out of the county training has to come before the board to be approved by the board, and then a report on the training is supposed to be made afterwards.
If you're,
So,
without looking at the exact invoice, that I believe that's when I traveled down to South Lake Tahoe for the General Managers Conference. I believe I reported back on that at the time. If any other board members if any board members would like me to do research to where that was brought for action in advance, I'll be more than happy to look into that.
Thank you. Deborah, did you have any other comments?
well, and I don't think it should be divided out that way. You know, he works more in, you know, there's percentages of areas in which he works. And the report you made was just that you had attended some general managers conference. And that was all the detail. And that was after the fact. So.
Thank you. If you could please state all your comments at one time, and then we'll bring it back to the board when the public comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
You know, there are policies about all this, and I'm really not seeing policies being followed. So I'm just throwing that out.
Thank you. Do you have anything else on this item?
That's it for me. Oh, sorry.
Dendra, yeah. Otherwise, I'm gonna, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public comment period and bring it back to the board for discussion or motion on the item as we see fit.
I move to receive and file the 2021 year-end budget, first actual report.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Dave, a second by John. And I'll go ahead and take the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Chris. Moving on to, I believe this is business item number 4, which is receive the fiscal year 20 audited financial statements. We'll go to Chris for a summary of this item.
Thank you. This is a very late report, latest in my history here. A general background, all agencies are essentially required to be audited by an independent contractor, and we usually rotate that person. He's a CPA specializing in this type of work every 3 years. And this year, 2020 report, which is a couple of years old now, this first report is the first time we've had Don Cole. We went out for a request for proposals for him to replace Terry Krieg, who did us for 9 years, which covered the bulk of my experience here. So he was relatively, well, he's brand new to us. And so there's a lot of nuances and new things that we had to learn, and he had to learn about us. We were very excited to have somebody a lot more QuickBooks savvy do our audit for us. So generally speaking, I think we came out looking really great. The performance is basically as we would have expected. There are some findings, and those findings are usually what has the district done wrong or can do better, or any material weaknesses in our procedures. And when you have one person doing the books and one guy overseeing that, and a water and sewer, three people work in the district, there's a lot of room for error there, and it's almost impossible for tiny agencies to always comply with those things. But in the letter that he wrote to the board, I did include that in the packet, and I put some notes in there and highlighted that we did correct on site while he was there, I believe, all of the issues that he had. So a lot of what the issues was the it's called Prop 2, which is a misnomer. It's our wastewater planning grant that we were to capitalize the planning as if it was construction. Without getting into too much detail, I never really expected. It is a value to the district, and it does increase our capacity, and it costs more than $5,000, so it should be capitalized. He didn't like the fact that that did not show up in that list, and he found that a material weakness, and we corrected that. That also was part of another finding that he had mentioned. So those two things are tied together. Another one of them was some accrued vacation issues that he had, I believe, and some general accounting stuff that we are getting a little more training in. I'm taking some classes actually this next semester too in accounting to improve my comfort level in diving further into these issues, especially as we start collecting literally millions of dollars in grant funds next year and doing some construction. We need to tighten up our ship. So this is a great time for him to find some holes in our program and have us correct those. The audit, by the way, is written by a CPA, and he basically takes the information we give him and turns them into gobbledygook that nobody understands but him or another CPA. That being said, I've had about 15 of these written in my this is the 14th one, I believe, or 13th. And I'm still not sure 100% what a lot of it tries to refer to, other than we use these documents to submit for funding from the state. For example, the $3.5 million water grant, their financial review includes 3 years of these audits. They would rather just get these audits from a CPA than contact lowly little us and ask for financial records. So they use these to determine our wherewithal in managing our system to that degree. So as of today, even I've been dealing with the water board, and they're currently going through the 2019 audit, and I have to answer some questions on how we've arrived at certain figures there. So I can do my best to answer some questions. I can preemptively answer some that I think are going to come up about the teenship fund and those which have been kind of lingering around for a while, that our auditor really wasn't 100% sure what this meant. But our general fund, we've got about 100 and some odd thousand dollars in cash in reserves, which is pretty good for us. But 24,000 and change is left over from our Teenship Resource Center fund that was to be transferred to Humboldt Area Foundation. The board did act a few years ago to transfer that over to an account at the nonprofit, and Selena Kalla and I are still supposed to get together and figure out exactly what that's going to look like. I can try to answer any more questions on that as they arise. That's basically it. We do have a new depreciation schedule that this auditor created for us. I'm happy to use that one now that my old one I created was a little bit wonky. So that finding was addressed. We did expect to have some policy revisions tonight that we didn't bring, that I thought would address some of these, but looking back through them, they were really irrelevant, and we would rather wait until next year after the new year and bring some policy that actually changes the way we operate with interfacing with the customers, like waiving deposits for using auto pay and things like that. So we'd like to bring a more robust policy discussion to the board than just dealing with specific auditor things. So that's kind of all I can really say to present the audit. And closing on this topic, the auditor did say he would present to the board. He hasn't responded to my inquiries about doing that yet. I think he wants to wrap up this final, the year right behind us, which is 21, and then make a presentation for both, I believe. But he did say he would do that, and it'd probably be a Zoom meeting with him as well. And if I hear back from him the next few weeks, maybe we can schedule that for January or February. And that being said, I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Do any members of the board have questions for Chris? Go ahead, Sequoia.
First of all, I want to say that's excellent. If we can get the auditor to present, that would be wonderful. And then just to clarify on the teenship funds, I'm totally wasn't sure what that was referring to. It was a program that was run by the district and then is no longer run by the district, and therefore we have money that's allocated for it. But since we're not running it, we're giving that money to a totally different entity that's not related to Manila, or if you could just kind of clarify that.
I think you just nailed it right on the head. That's exactly right. Let me be careful how I proceed here. There's been discussions about why would we transfer this money. Let me back up completely. The program, the Wellness Village Resource Center Teenship program, had about a $24,000 surplus at the end of that activity when it closed out. We were left, it might have been 35 or 12, but all these adjustments being made, we were left with a specific figure of $24,775. What to do with that money became kind of a topic several years ago, and the program manager at the time and the board, and she was a board member, they acted to transfer those funds to a youth program at Humboldt Area Foundation. That being said, and this is where it gets a little hot topicy, no board action can tie the hands of a future board. You're free to do whatever you wish to do within the confines of your authority with these funds, so long as these funds are spent for which the purposes they were received, which they were raised. So they're still sitting in our bank account collecting interest in them. To answer your question, I think I answered it. The board did move to have these allocated to fund youth programs outside of the agency or within the agency, depending on who went to Humboldt Area Foundation to apply for these, be it a scholarship or recreational activities. We didn't get too far into defining how those funds would be dispersed.
Just a quick follow-up on that. The Humboldt Area Foundation Teen Program that the previous board had voted to allocate these funds for, is that program like waiting in eager anticipation of these funds and something like that, or do they not even know that this has happened?
No, I've contacted them a couple of times and we never could get the three of us together, but they were going to create a new fund specifically for this $24,000, which is not a lot for them to react to. But there's no fund that was sitting there waiting, drumming their fingers, waiting for this funding, or we would have just wrote a check and asked for forgiveness if we didn't do it right. So we're just sitting here today going, why are we sitting on this money? That would buy a few speed humps, which I'm sure would be very controversial because that's not why the funds were raised. But I've also been asked, and I have to throw it out there, why didn't the district just transfer this straight to the resource center now that's run by Redwood Coast Montessori, which is a valid question. I don't have the answer to that. Yeah, did that answer your question, Sequoia? Cool.
Yeah, I would think perhaps if the funds were for teenagers and the Montessori school is elementary school, maybe that would also not be exactly the, but yeah, anyways, I get it. It's a little bit of an interesting situation.
Thank you. Any further questions for Chris? Seeing none, open public comment, and Dendra, if you'd like your 3 minutes, now would be the time.
Okay, just to clarify that can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, because my phone keeps going off and on. There was a teenship program, and Redwood Coast Montessori, the Family Resource Center, stopped the teenship program. They don't do any of the programs that were previously done, pretty much. And that was money that the teens put on events to raise money. And when they would do that, they would get a certain percentage each teen for helping, how many hours they helped, they got a certain, and then they could apply to that if they needed help with books or school clothes or calculators, things like that. And so that's why Selena wanted to turn it over to HAF so that could set up something similar like that for teens that are in need to further their education or to do recreational activities that they can't afford to do. Like they would go on skiing trips and different things that aren't offered to the teens in Manila. And then my other question on this, on page 29, under resources inflows, and it says property taxes, and it was budgeted for 20,000, and then the actual was 31,130. And so what was the 11,130 and who authorized that? How was that authorized? It's not in the budget, and you're supposed to draw down taxes. You're supposed to bring certain forms to the board that the board, even if they approve it in the budget, there's a form for drawdowns or deposits into any of those 25 accounts at the, the county, and they haven't been happening.
Do
So
you have any other questions?
who is signing off on this?
Do you have other questions on the report? And then when we'll get a response on all questions at one time for you.
Well, that, and I think the
You got page
board should
29.
set up,
But
personally, I think the board should set up an audit committee made up of the finance officer and another board meeting that can meet with the auditor. Because I was on the audit committee twice. And I think you should request that staff give more information about these responses, like new process implemented. What's the new process? Because I'm concerned that there's such small staff now. And some of these are concerned with funds that are coming in and not getting to the bank, and things that are getting done late and not, there's a bunch of different things. I've never seen anything with this many pages, with this many recommendations from all the audits that I've set through. And so, you guys are responsible for the district's money. And you've only got a financer's eyes, and that's it, finance officer. They put the money in the 2520 accounts, all those 2,500 accounts, to make it difficult for it to be drawn down, more difficult than if you put it in a Coast Central account, which it appears the general manager wants to do in the future. And I know there's problems with the county, but there's been, I'm not saying it's happening, but there's been fraud in the past in this district. It's a small district, smaller now. There's hardly any eyes watching different budgets and stuff compared to what it used to be 10 years ago. There'd be a lot more eyes, and this board is less experienced. I don't know what anybody's experience is on the board with reading audits and all these financial reports. And I do ask a lot of questions because, I've been involved for a lot of years. I wish I wasn't, but if somebody else would step up from the community, I'd be happy to drop off.
thank you. 10 seconds remaining on the public comment time.
Anyway, so audit committee, a response in more detail about what those comments mean to the audit, for the audit, and how is the internal controls being controlled with sometimes just one person at the office, or, all the different hours that people have. And, there's cash coming in at different times when the administrative assistant isn't there, and there's supposed to be 2 sets of eyes on everything, or 3.
Okay, thank you very much.
So how is that happening now?
Let's be the closed public comment.
One person's supposed to
And
take the
bring it
money to the
back to the
bank, one person's supposed to do this, one person's supposed to do that.
Appreciate your comments, Sandra. Thank you. And we're gonna, I'm gonna close the public comment and bring this item back to the board. Does the board have, and this would be a good time for discussion, or would the board like any feedback from Chris on public comments made this evening?
Looked like Chris was ready to kind of talk a bit, so that's great if he wants to go into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, the budgeted amounts here, I think my screen is pretty clear. Here's the original, as far as the comment goes. I budgeted $20,000 in taxes. Our final budgeted amount was $20,000 because we didn't do any adjustments, and we actually received $31,000. So we have an $11,130 bonus. So that's actually really good news. So I'm happy that Dendra pointed out that. I don't think I recall. As far as findings in the audit, it's to be expected that certain things would be found. I don't want to spend too much time on talking about what audit findings were from the past that required grand jury involvement and things like that. So I'm pretty proud of where we've arrived today. Things are pretty clean. We're small, lean, and tight, and we're running pretty efficiently. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. And go ahead, Dave.
I mean, I guess this is probably a longer conversation and I can just stop by at some point. And to Dendra's question, I don't have any experience reading district budgets, but you know, I mean, ran a small business for a little while and all that. So some experience reading budgets. They don't look like this audit though, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, Dendra gets into a lot of stuff like these 2,500 accounts and blah, 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 but, and we can talk about that because I don't know, you know, I don't have any experience with it, but I guess, you know, my question relating to the property taxes and the actual money coming in, I mean, how often are, you know, properties reappraised for their taxes? Who's doing that? So like, I mean, I guess how does the actual end up so far above what you were expecting?
It ends up that we get a lot more property taxes than we actually allocate. So we don't, if we're going to get, say, 31,000 next year, let's say that's exactly 31,000. I could budget all of that, but we've always been very conservative with our budgeting of property taxes and only budgeted what was enough to cover the expenses. So we do have an overage. I would love to be able to tell you exactly how much that overage is today because, but the auditor accounting's office is a little bit delayed in getting our reconciliation reports to us. I think what you're bringing up is let me back up a little bit. The 2520 she mentioned is where the property taxes are placed from the county. We have in California Prop 13, which limits increases in property taxes to 2% a year. We get 1% of the county share. So it's about that 31,000 for the entire community is our particular share of that. It used to be around 40,000, but we stopped with our assessment for a debt service that we no longer have. But basically what this $11,130 remnant will just be an increase in our savings account for the most part. We'd be able to allocate this a little more precisely if we knew exactly what we were getting, but we don't spend all of our property taxes is what it's coming down to. And Dave, obviously, anytime if you guys or anybody wants to come in, and maybe I owe it to the board, maybe at the next meeting or so, I'll draw up a kind of a flow chart of how money flows in and out of the county and into the district. We didn't do any drawdowns. To Dendra's point, as far as forms go, we allocate a certain dollar figure from our general fund to pay for general fund activities, but we didn't need the cash. If our bank accounts were down into the $1,000 or, you know, we're bouncing in the zeros, we'd be going to the county and begging for money like all these other agencies are. But we're lucky we have plenty of operational cash at the bank and our checking account that we don't have to do that. We still account for it on paper though.
Great, thank you, Chris. Yeah.
Can I?
No, the public comment is closed on this item. Thank you.
Well, I
do
didn't explain what I
think it would be good, as you suggested, Chris, to bring back an item for next month to show how money flows in and out. And I think that'd be good for the board to show the community that we are interested in learning more about how the district functions. I thought that while I appreciate the report, I did find that the findings, you know, I typically look to the findings that help summarize it, I think, and, you know, what does all this mean? And, you know, I do appreciate that you took the time to then comment on what's been done, you know, how it's been addressed, whether it's been completed, it's not, it still needs work. You know, I think that made this much more digestible for me. So I appreciate your efforts on that. Are there any other comments for Chris on this item or questions?
You're not letting me question.
No, the public comment has been closed. Thank you.
I would like to respond to what he said because he didn't.
And I think I'm just going back trying to find the cover page. I think on this item, Chris was looking for a motion essentially to receive and file the report.
Move that we move and file the report.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sequoia. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you all very much. Next, we'll be moving on in the agenda, the consent calendar. Typically, items in the consent calendar are approved through one motion. I will, however, poll the audience to see for each item to see if there are any public comments on the items on the consent calendar. If there are specific comments on the items, they will be removed for separate discussion. So in polling the audience, this would be on consent calendar item number 5 of approving the draft minutes of the regular meeting of October 21st, 2021. Are there any comments on that? Seeing none, item number 5 will remain on the consent calendar. Number 6 is a approved draft minutes of regular meeting of November 18th, 2021. And I'll do a poll of the audience to see if anyone would like that one removed from the consent calendar. Seeing none, item number 6 will remain on the consent calendar. And consent calendar number 7 is to receive the check register. I'll poll the audience to see if there are any members of the public who would like this item removed from the consent calendar. Seeing none, item number 7 will also remain on the consent calendar. With that, I'd be looking to the board for a motion on approving the consent calendar items 5, 6, and 7.
A motion that we approve the consent calendar, items 5, 6, and 7.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, David Sequoia, and all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Motion carries 4-0 and approving the consent calendar on tonight's agenda. Next, we will go to reports. Is there anyone who has any committee reports for this month? It's item number 8.
What exactly is a committee report? Sorry.
The committee, well, and Chris could answer this too, but the committee reports
Specific to our allocation.
Specific to
Safety officer.
Yeah, and we voted, I believe, at the last hearing on primary and secondary representatives to the Redwood Region Economic Development Commission, which Danielle attends monthly, also Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. So those are a couple, and I know in past Chris is also.
It came back to me. Sorry, I just
Okay,
made a
sure.
little jab. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. No reports for me. No extra reports from me for this month. And seeing none from anybody else, I'll go to item number 9. And this is the staff reports and just general manager notes for the month. And so I'll hand it over to Chris.
Thank you very much. I hope you all survived our 6.2 earthquake, which woke us up pretty big. And I'll start somewhere else, actually. We got a notice that we did not get our $1.6 million park improvement grant. Staff is somewhat relieved that we don't have to manage that, juggling with our pending other capital grants, but we did get the 177. I got that put in last week, and I expected to have a contract by today, which I do not have just yet. 1 second here. So that's going to be a fun thing. I did do the projects that we agreed upon last month, and I added all those and got some cost estimates that were within a couple of $100. So it sounds like it's all feasible, and I'll be reporting more on that grant as we move forward. The flood protection grant, yada, yada, nothing new there. I wanted to jump in because of the earthquake to the tsunami evacuation drill. I met with OES and NOAA, and we are planning for Saturday, March 19th next year at 9:30 for a tsunami evacuation drill specific to Manila. I'll bring that back to the board in a reporting fashion as we move forward. We normally would kind of poll the community to see who's available for what or at the board level, but it gets too unwieldy, and we just decided to pick a date and run with it and hope everybody can wake up and do it. So that will be that date. A good thing I want to bring up is that everybody seems to be going away from tsunami sirens. We have a siren that was donated that is dysfunctional, and it was going to be pretty expensive to get one out of our general fund, to pay for one, to get one that works. It's been very important for people to have it. But I'm glad to hear Troy Nicolini and others say that with technology today, that everybody has a phone. If you noticed your phone blowing up because of the earthquake, that it's a lot more effective to spend money on that kind of infrastructure than to get these ancient sirens running, especially ours, which is in a terrible environment. So I'll report back more on this evacuation drill. I did want to bounce over real quick to a homeless issue that's brewing in our dunes. There's some chatter in the background going on between the county, the sheriff, and some residents about a camp that we're aware of on our property just north of the dog ranch. And I'll report more later. I brought it up a few months ago that we're aware of it. It's kind of a sensitive topic of how we rehome these people, or what we're going to do within our management purview of the dunes. So we're aware of that. And if people do ask you about it and complain to you as a board member, you can direct them to staff. I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody about this and what our plans are to work with the county to help alleviate that. A very difficult thing to deal with. A big concern that I don't know how to deal with yet is we're going to get a $275,000 advance on our drainage grant to prevent cash flow problems. And I'm very reluctant to put that money in the county treasury, because if you've read Lost Coast Outpost, or you're aware of the auditor controllers problems they're having. I don't know if we'd want to get stuck not being able to pay our bills. So we're going to meet with Alicia and I are going to meet with Coast Central and see what kind of insured accounts can be placed, how we can break that up to fall still within an insurable amount. Once you exceed 250,000, you're not insured. So we don't want to do that. It'd be preferable to put it in the county treasury. And I can elaborate on that next month when I talk about how money flows in and out of the district. I think that's pretty much, there's a new prevailing wage case law that's blurring some lines. It's not really affecting us today because prices are high and wages are going up for that type of stuff, which is getting prevailing wage anyway. But I thought I'd bring that up. That's prices are going up for everything. There's a note in here about the PG&E overcharging for the water power from Humboldt Bay. I talked about that earlier. Backing up a little here, there's a hazardous tree at the community center. There's some very big, large pines out front. And I'm going to have an arborist give me a report on what we can do as far as keeping them. We really want to keep them as much as possible because they're so beautiful and they're humongous and they've been around for a long time. But one of them did fall in 2005. And we've had some limbs falling recently, and they're big enough to kill somebody, and we want to avoid that. So I'll be bringing that back to the board unless there becomes an emergency between now and then and I have to take them down, but I'll do my best to avoid that and seek further board input on that. So if anybody has any questions or anything specific they'd like to talk about, I'm here.
I'd just like to say regarding the encampments, I would definitely like that to be something that's brought before the board before any action or anything is taken on that particular issue. It's definitely, like you said, a very tricky one. So just kind of my thoughts on that is that it would be good to get as much board input and that's going to be a tricky one. But everything else sounds good to me.
Yeah, on that, Sequoia, if you don't mind me jumping in, I've told within the thread that we're discussing with Mike Wilson and the undersheriff, I said that I did bring this up to my board and I expect the board would be supportive of a coordinated effort. What we used to do, by the way, was to go out there with a pickup truck and a trailer and we would empty a camp and we would leave a sign that we had their stuff and we're going to hold it for 30 days and then we dispose of it. And that was, it's a different world now and we're not sure there's people in it. In fact, I know one of the people who are actually living in there and have talked to them about it. They clearly don't care that it's unlawful to camp in the dunes, but as you're all aware, there's a lot of, it's a sensitive topic. So if anything transpires between now and our next board meeting, Sequoia, I wouldn't mind if you don't mind getting a hold of you directly and getting you involved as an individual then, because there could be some stuff happening sooner than later.
That would be excellent. I would appreciate just being kept in the loop on that. Thanks, Chris.
I think if we do, oh, go ahead, Dave.
Oh, this is not, this is a different topic.
Oh, okay, just on that, I think if we are going to have presentation or additional information come forward to the board, being clear on what our jurisdiction is, what we can and cannot control, I think I would like that to be clear. Just so, seems, and how much, what the feedback they want from us. Because I think that, like you said, it's multi-agency, there's law enforcement, county, different jurisdictions that are involved that may have oversight over it, that, things need to happen whether we disagree or not. So wherever that lies, I'd just be curious to know a little more on that, how the jurisdiction falls. But overall, I agree that coordinated effort with the different agencies is a great way to move forward. Thank you. And go ahead, Dave.
So yeah, with in relation to the tsunami / earthquake warning and everything, that will be, I mean, if you're in touch with NOAA and you're coordinating with them, I guess this is my, I'm being from the East Coast, it was my first earthquake, so it was pretty cool. And the warning was great, but then I was like, well, wait, do I need, what's the deal? Do I need to evacuate? Do I need, and so, I mean, I guess another layer of information. So, I mean, eventually I found it online and I was like, okay, cool. I don't need to go anywhere, because it was like, you go to the tsunami website. So anyway, I just like, if that information could also come along. I mean, I don't know what you can do. It's a big government agency, but as you'll be talking to them, it would be nice to just have that to, come up short. So I'm not like running up to the dunes or whatever. So just a thought.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've been trying to, and it's probably not the best medium to reach out to ratepayers, is as they come in and sign up for service, we do a little spiel about tsunamis, and it's, as time goes on without any earthquakes, we start to dry up like everybody else and becomes unimportant. And the other day it really woke us up when, hey, here it is. We live on the Triple Junction and it's a dangerous place to live. And to be specific, your evacuation route is directly up behind our building and right up to the dunes, and we'll be really clear with that. I used to have them in a KMZ file that you could download and put in Google Earth, so you'd always have them in your phone. It doesn't help you if you're at the mall. And on that, and I have to say, a siren and warnings won't do any good for a local event like that, like we experienced yesterday. What I've been told by every professional in this world is that the ground shaking is your warning, and you will just know. And they literally quantify it with "you will just know." And I run with that, and I go outside and I go, I guess I'm not running away, and I'm not grabbing my backpack and running to the dunes, because I don't feel like that's enough of an earthquake to generate a tsunami. I have no idea how you would know, but they say it's like 30 seconds long and it's severe shaking. And I guess I'll have to go with "we will know." Luckily for us, and I feel very lucky being here in this dangerous quote unquote place that we live, surrounded by an evacuation zone. If you're on this side of the highway, I think John and Meg, you got to run across the highway. So maybe we'll put some speed humps on the highway to make sure you cross safely to the high dunes. But Dave, to close out on that, I'll bring back some more robust information about tsunami evacuation plans. The district is behind that, and we've been instrumental in creating those evacuation routes and signage for that. And I owe it to you guys to bring a little more substance to the board with that.
That'd be great. Thank you. Was there any impact, any district facilities from the earthquake?
It knocked our phone out at the lift station, of all things. Good news to hear. We have some, I'll spend a minute here. We have some clamps and some backup procedures to try to predict what would happen if our pipes broke, in particular at the lift station. That's where we're really worried, because if those pipes sheared, it would fill that thing full of unmentionables very quickly, and it would render it unusable indefinitely. That being said, we have no idea how those pipes would shift and break like that, but part of our wastewater grant is to break that connection at the pond so they wouldn't flow backwards into that hole. And I'll be brief with this on Dendra's point about having backhoes and heavy equipment. It does all of a sudden ring true to me that, well, how am I going to go fix a pipe if I'm the only one here to do this and I don't have a backhoe? I'm happy to report our backhoe has been completely revamped and it works better than ever. And it's down the street at Vern Steele's house. He bought it and he said we can use it anytime we want. So I'm really glad that however that worked out, our local guy did get it and he said I can use it anytime we want. I should probably get it out there on Lupin and use it to scrape that road and fix that. My car doesn't like it. So that's that. We can't plan for everything, but we are here for everybody at any time for these things. And I'm glad everybody got warnings about that earthquake. It was a wake-up call for us. We didn't suffer any damage other than the phone being out, which now we get the new phone system put up there and we'll be better for it.
Great. Well, thank you for the update. I'm glad to hear it's minimal for what occurred. Thank you for the report. Is there any other questions for Chris on the report for this month? Are there any other items that any members of the board would like to bring up? I would just like to thank you all for participating on our first Tuesday meeting since we changed from Tuesday to Thursday. It's really great, and I do appreciate where everybody was supportive of making this change. And with that, I hope everyone has a great holidays coming up. Enjoying some time off and time with friends and family. And we will be back. This very lovely tree you have in your office. We will be back for our next regular meeting. I believe it is January 18th of 2022. So with that, I would like to conclude tonight's Manila Community Service District Board meeting, and it is 7:51 p.m. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good, happy holidays.
Thank you. Take care.
Happy holidays.